Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for your patience, and we are delighted to welcome you here to our webinar in collaboration with the Family Councils of Ontario, focused on welcoming families back and what to expect and tools for success. My name is Amy Kupal. I am the CEO of the Ontario Caregiver Organization, and I'm joined today by Sam Peck, who is the Executive Director of Family Councils of Ontario, as well as Joanne Sidorchuk, who is the project lead on this initiative at the Ontario Caregiver Organization. So we're really pleased to be here with you today. We have a number of pieces of information to share with you. I want to, before we start, introduce Stacy, who you will have heard moments ago, as well as in the chat. She will be responding to any questions in the chat and monitoring those. We do have a time at the end for questions, so we will do our best to consolidate those questions. We likely won't have time to answer everything, but we'll do our best to respond to those in a consolidated way and send a follow-up if necessary. So let's move to the next slide, please. So in terms of Zoom, I want to just share a little bit of information about the Zoom webinar features. Your microphone and video will be muted for this webinar. You will have the opportunity to see and hear from all of the panelists who will be speaking today. And you can send messages to all panelists or to all panelists and attendees in the chat box. And so you are welcome to use that to pose your questions, and we will consolidate those when we get to that time in the webinar. I do want to note that this webinar is being recorded and will be posted on the OCO and FCO websites, so that people who weren't able to attend at this time have an opportunity to hear this information. So if you have any technical issues or need technical support, feel free to message Stacy, who you will see in the chat box, and she'll be able to help you. So let's move to a little bit of an overview of the discussion today. We have a few key goals in terms of what we are focusing on today. One is to explore and understand the stages of reopening and what does that mean in terms of what we can expect in terms of visiting in long-term care homes. We will also share information about the Ontario Caregiver Organization and Family Councils of Ontario and how these organizations can support family caregivers. And then we'll also share resources and tools to support engaging caregivers as partners in care during these changing times. So we certainly understand and are involved in discussions with many of you about how things have changed and evolved over time. This is our best information based on what's available right now, and we will continue to engage in dialogue with a wide range of stakeholders as we have been throughout the process to get us connected and collaborate and to work together on the best possible solutions to very unusual and challenging circumstances. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Sam to talk about family councils.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for spending your time with us this afternoon, and for those watching the recording at a later date, for taking that time out of your day as well. Family Councils of Ontario is a charitable, independent, not-for-profit in Ontario. It's in the name. We're funded by the Ontario Ministry of Long-Term Care. We work with family councils and family council members all across the province in Ontario's 600+ long-term care homes. Our vision is that all people in long-term care have a vibrant experience and the best care. And that experience is for residents, families, and staff, and volunteers, and everyone who walks the halls of a long-term care home. And our mission to accomplish that vision is we seek to lead and support families in improving quality of life in their long-term care homes. When we move on to the next slide, I can tell you a little bit more about who we are. So ultimately, our goal is to help families and friends of residents living in a long-term care home to improve the quality of life in that location, in that community. We do a lot of education, training, lots of consultations. We're a staff of 4 based in Toronto and Sudbury, and it's a big province. So we do a lot of our work through phone and email. In an ordinary non-COVID time, we'd be holding events, to bring folks together to engage in peer support, information sharing, and so on. We also do a lot in research and system planning, and ultimately to help families and family councils create systemic change. During COVID, we've pivoted, seems to be the word of the pandemic, a little bit to helping families understand the experience, what's happening during COVID, why we're here today, and to lead them through this challenging time. So it's a bit about us, but what has it been like for families? So we can see here, and I intentionally used a format like this as opposed to bullet points because all of these experiences are intertwined. We're hearing a lot from families really since February, even before things really changed. A lot of potential loss and heartbreak and fear. Really, how do I navigate this changing world as a family caregiver? And I'm using family to encompass the full gamut of biological, chosen, etc. family. So I'm not excluding friends or anyone else who's important to a resident, but we use family as a catch-all. Families were confused about what was happening and what was going to happen. And to be honest, we were as well. We didn't know quite what to expect, but so we've been trying to help you through this as best we can. The issues we're hearing about are those directives and guidelines. So what's actually happening in long-term care. Issues around communication. How do I communicate with my loved one's home? What's happening with testing? What's happening with essential visitors? A lot of grief, loss, pain, fear, heartbreak, and so on. But we're also hearing and continue to hear the importance of connection and peer support. So to be able to connect with your peers who understand what you're going through. So you're doing that just by being here with us today. You're engaging in support and learning so you can better understand how to navigate this really trying and difficult time. If we move on to the next slide, just a bit of a timeline as to what's happened. So in December of 2019, the WHO was informed of a pneumonia of unknown origin in China. In March 2020, COVID-19 was classified as a pandemic virus. And really, we did know that time there was a global crisis. Just a few days later, on March 14th in Ontario, long-term care homes unfortunately had to close to visitors, and that was all visitors at that time. So that was whether you're an essential family caregiver, an essential visitor, or whoever it was, but that was a difficult decision to make, and we know people are still heartbroken and upset about it. But when these policies were implemented, long-term care homes were much more vulnerable to COVID-19 outbreaks for a few reasons. We didn't really understand asymptomatic transmission and atypical presentations of COVID-19. So we didn't really understand how it presented in, for example, older adults. And it presents differently than it would for someone my age. Also, many homes didn't yet have the most robust infection prevention and control measures in place. And that included things like universal masking and only working at one site, which you see a little bit down in that timeline. And access to personal protective equipment and diagnostic testing were much more limited. So at that time, the decision was made for those reasons to close homes to visitors. And then just a few days after that, a state of emergency was declared in Ontario, which as of July 9th is expected to at least be in effect to about July 22nd. Fast forwarding to April 15th, the government issued an emergency order that staff could only work at one long-term care or other health site as a way to prevent transmission from site to site. June 18th, we've seen that outdoor visits between families and residents can resume. So it's taken a long time, and I know you're frustrated, and I know you want to know when you'll have access to your loved ones. and how many outdoor visits might be allowed. So we're going to get to that in just a moment. We move on to the next slide. Okay, government directive is what a lot of people want to know about. The big one is called Directive 3. And that's where we talk about first active screening and testing, and that's of residents and staff. And also around testing for visitors now, that you are, if you're going to visit long-term care home, you would need to have a negative COVID-19 test within the last 14 days. Now, it's really important to note that doesn't mean you have to go to the home and show them your test. It's called an attestation, which is your vowing for the truth of that test. So you do not need to hand over your personal health information. Really important to note. Also covers admissions and readmissions, so that folks who are perhaps in hospital or who have been moved out of their long-term care home, there's provisions for that. The use of personal protective equipment. So when do you need a mask? When do you need other PPE? So I'll use PPE and just keep in mind that means personal protective equipment. Things like masks, gloves, gowns, and so on. It also includes limiting work locations, as we mentioned earlier, staff and resident cohorting. And that's where if you have residents who are ill, staff will only work with those residents and not between well and ill residents. It also talks about the need for the home to communicate with families. If your home isn't doing this to your satisfaction, we'll have some support available for you on that, but feel free to get in touch with us. It also talks about visitors, and I know that is the hot button topic, and I'm sure one of the reasons that you're with us today. Now, this directive does allow for essential visitors to visit in long-term care. It still does. Now, what it does say, though, is that it's someone who is providing care to a resident. So it's someone who needs to perhaps be assisting at meal times, otherwise your person won't be eating, or for responsive behaviors, things like that. So there still is a provision for those critical services to be delivered by families. So that's really important to keep in mind, is that while homes have been closed to most visitors, there is some provision there for those essential visitors. Now, now I know that not all homes have interpreted this quite the same way, and that is a bit of a challenge. So we are still working with the government to get written clarification on this, so that homes will all be following the same approaches. And yes, this directive is in effect now. It's been revised a few times, but it is available for you to look at. Our contact information will be at the end, so if you have any questions about it, we can still provide you with that. I know it's still a little discretionary, I'm hearing, about those visitors, but our goal is to get some clarification on that to be able to help you through this. And then moving on to the next phase. What everyone wants to know about is, when are homes going to be reopening to visitors? So there's a couple phases, and you might notice, or you might be familiar with this green image on the left of your screen. That is the document that was released by the Ministry of Long-Term Care about resuming visits in long-term care homes. Right now, we're in phase 1. Phase 1 is those outdoor visits. I know it's really difficult right now with the extreme heat that we're under. These are outdoor visits, only for homes that are not in outbreak. I know as of right now, we're only in around the low double digits of homes that are in outbreak. And given when we were in triple digits, I must say I'm pleased to see that we have been steadily daily reducing the number of homes in outbreak. It is 1 visitor per resident per visit. Now, it doesn't mean that it's only 1 visit happening at a time in your long-term care home. That depends on how much space is available to safely visit. But there's a minimum, and this is very clearly laid out in this guide issued by the government. It's a minimum of 1 visit per resident per week, no shorter than 30 minutes. Now, I do know that sometimes your pre-screening and so on, but it's a minimum. It's not what the homes have to do necessarily. You do need to schedule those visits in advance in order to ensure really safe numbers of folks in a space at a time. You will need, we're seeing the attestation. You will need to basically vow that you've had a negative test within the last 14 days. And you will need to be wearing a mask. Saying so that PPE, it's a mask. If you, for whatever reason, whether it's communication, someone needs to see your face, the government has okayed a clear face shield if that is your only option. Phase 2, I think, is what everyone seems to want to know about. That specifics and timing are to be determined. What I'm hearing is that it will likely be moving to more indoor visits, but we're still waiting to see what that's going to look like. I am hopeful that it's going to be soon, especially given that we are dealing with some extreme heat, but the specifics and the timing of that are to be determined. As Family Councils Ontario, we are working with the government to provide family input, and that's with the ADM Associate Deputy Minister Brian Pollard. He's in policy and licensing, and we're also working with the other ministry areas in order to make sure that that families have access to their folks, because we know it's important. We know that it's necessary for resident well-being and for family caregiver well-being. But we do know that we're still in that phase of, and I'm using phase generally, not specific to these two, this time of figuring out how to balance risk mitigation with access. And that, I believe, and what we're advocating for, is to be phase 2, that it needs to be balancing those different needs in order to make sure that people can visit safely and that caregivers themselves are not being put at risk. So this is what we know right now. And if you're sure you've been following along with the pandemic, things change regularly. So this is what we know. It's the best available information right now. Again, we can move on to the next piece.
Great, thank you. I want to acknowledge that we have a number of questions through the chat. Please feel free to keep them coming. We are consolidating those questions and we will have a Q&A session at the end. There will be pieces that there will be answers to, and there will be pieces that we won't have answers to. So like you, we wait for confirmation of what stage 2 will look like and when that will occur. So both of our organizations have the opportunity to provide input to the government on the experiences of families and caregivers, of the concerns that people have, and of the kinds of things that people are looking for. So we appreciate your comments and all the ways that we connect in communication with everyone. What we don't know is when things will be made official, or when or what the specifics will be. So certainly as soon as we do hear about that, we'll have the opportunity to regroup and continue our efforts. But I really appreciate everybody's questions and comments that are coming through today, so thank you for that. I'm going to share a little bit about you in terms of the Ontario Caregiver Organization. So we support all caregivers across the province of Ontario, regardless of the person that they are caring for, in terms of the condition that they may have, in terms of the age of that person, whether they're living at home, in long-term care, in the hospital, on an in or outpatient basis. And so our vision is that all caregivers in Ontario feel supported and valued, and our mission is around improving the caregiving experience in Ontario. And certainly the last several months have been extremely challenging for caregivers, regardless of their circumstance. So let's go to the next slide, please. So in terms of who we are and what we do support those 3.3 million caregivers, and those are unpaid caregivers who provide physical or emotional support to a family member, partner, friend, or neighbor. So we often refer to caregivers as family caregivers as well, similar to how Sam described as a bit of a catch-all, but we know that many people make the personal commitment, excuse me, to provide care through a number of different relationships that they have with people. So our organization provides a central point of access to information and support for those different caregivers, regardless of the age, the location across the province, or the condition of the person they're caring for, and to work to bridge the gaps between programs and services by collaborating with caregivers themselves, with healthcare providers, with other organizations, and with government. So we work with a wide range of stakeholders and certainly have been actively involved in dialogue with stakeholders and collaborators in long-term care, as well as other settings across the province during the pandemic. So I wanted to share a little bit with you about how our organizations are working together, as we do have this mutual area of both interest and concern. And we certainly saw that the pandemic presented an opportunity for us to work together and to avoid duplication. So, excuse me. One of the reasons that we're doing this webinar today is to avoid duplication and to really provide information across our organizations to a broader group of interested caregivers who are with us today and who will see the recording as well. So we recognize that the family councils really know those needs of families and friends of long-term care home residents extremely well, and that OCO knows those wide range of needs and the caregiver role, the kinds of things that the caregiver does on a day-to-day basis. And I know, Sam, you acknowledged that in your overview of what those essential caregivers are providing as well. So what I'm pleased to share with you today is some of the resources that we've developed through our Partners in Care initiatives. And these are specific to long-term care homes. So we have a few pieces that are in development or have been developed now, with more to come. So one is a checklist that really looks at what is needed to help facilitate change, to engage families, and to proactively manage those challenging situations. As we've seen illustrated in the chat today and from many conversations that we've had with caregivers, communication is key, and we know that this is one of the things that caregivers value very, very much in terms of understanding not only the particular circumstances of the person that they're caring for, but also the needs they have and how those needs are being addressed. So that initial resource, I think, is one of the things that we have been able to support in that process. We also have a document that's about what caregivers can expect when coming into long-term care homes. And I want to acknowledge that in the chat, we've certainly seen a diversity of experiences that people have had, and we're aware that people are having different kinds of experiences in different circumstances. And that's one of the important opportunities that we have in dialogue, is to really share those concerns and to look at opportunities to address them in terms of seeing some more consistent approaches across the province. We have our Partners in Care pledge, which I'll share with you shortly, that really looks at how we can collectively ensure the safety of residents and staff, as well as caregivers themselves and others. And then we have the Caregiver ID program, which includes a sticker and badge to recognize and formalize caregiver access. There's also more in development, and we'll have the opportunity to share that with you down the road. So if you visit our website at ontariocaregiver.ca, you can find the information there on Partners in Care. It includes the elements that I've described, and you can see some of the icons for that that's on our website. So you're welcome to visit us there, and also to check out the many other resources that we have for caregivers. Then I want to just share a little bit of an overview in terms of that overview that I shared in terms of what caregivers can expect, and how we will evolve that document as guidelines and direction changes. We'll make sure that that stays up to date. But I want to also share with you the Partners in Care pledge. And this is something that was developed in collaboration with caregivers. One of the things that is really important for us as an organization is that when we create something, we do so in collaboration with caregivers. So we have a number of ways that we work with caregivers. We have our caregiver advisory group, We have a very broad caregiver advisory panel, as well as working groups who work with us on specific issues such as this. And we were able to collaboratively develop the Partners in Care Pledge, which includes a pledge for the long-term care home around keeping family caregivers, residents, and staff safe by doing the things that you see there, and a pledge on the part of caregivers in terms of what they will do to ensure that things remain safe and smooth in the work together. So this is a work in progress. We continue to have dialogue with a number of stakeholders about this, and we'll evolve this pledge as the circumstances change. In terms of the Caregiver ID program, this is actually something that we've adapted from work that's taken place with the Change Foundation, who initiated the Caregiver ID program, and that started in hospitals. But it feels very, very relevant now in terms of the need to have a clear method for identifying family caregivers who provide that physical and emotional support for someone in a long-term care home. It helps to make screening process much more easily occur when they go into the home. It also ensures safe movement throughout the building once they're inside, and it supports policy in terms of what's happening within individual homes. So we have a learning collaborative that's forming around initiating this in homes that are interested in being a part of it across the province. It's part of the broader Partners in Care initiative that we are undertaking within long-term care, as well as with hospitals and other forms of congregated living. And so we're really looking forward to rolling that out more broadly and expanding it as that is allowed through government guidelines and directives. So with that, I am going to turn it back over to Sam. You're muted, Sam.
I'm just going to take a quick moment and perhaps respond to some of the questions that have come up already before we get into perhaps some of those communication pieces. Just that way we are still related to the content. So I'm just going to check what we've got here. Okay, so talking about family councils and meetings in the home, because it's been paused during COVID, we are hopefully this week or early next week. So that would be the week of July 10th or the week of July 13th. Be releasing a virtual meetings toolkit to help councils take their meetings into a virtual environment, because we do want to ensure that councils can still meet and to connect over what's happening right now and plan their work for the future. So stay tuned. What information do I need to know to visit my loved one in long-term care? So you'll need to know who to contact to book that visit, what the screening process is going to look like. They should be telling you that. Around testing, so that's something you need to be aware of, and to bring a face covering. So things like that. Your home is the best one to give you that information. Clarifying between essential visitors and essential care partners. Essential visitor is what's in that directive, that Directive 3 that we talked about. And those are the only people, only family visits that are allowed to be in the long-term care home right now. So if you are being denied access as an essential visitor, you'll need to contact, you can contact the Patient Ombudsman's office. They'll be able to help facilitate a resolution. And you can also lodge a complaint with the Ministry of Long-Term Care through the Family Support and Action line. Okay, because those are terms that aren't necessarily used consistently. So for the sake of the directive, we will be continuing to use what's there, which is essential visitor. Okay, so long-term care are not taking family availability in mind when scheduling outdoor visits and parameters. If you feel that it's not accommodating your needs as a family member, once again, the Patient Ombudsman Office can help navigate and negotiate a resolution to that. So we're encouraging people to contact them, because part of their mandate is early resolution, which means they'll help you facilitate a resolution. and talking about getting tested, then retested every 2 weeks to visit. That's correct. That's what you will need to do. That's in, it's in the direction provided. So also, I saw another question about that attestation. So that, that vow that the information is correct, that you're giving, that you have a negative test. That's from the date of test, not the date of receiving the results. So what I've heard some people have done in some areas is scheduling testing every 2 weeks in order to be able to accommodate a high visiting frequency. That's something you might want to look into. Limiting work locations. So that is around healthcare. So I'm not sure if it includes retirement, but I can follow up perhaps after with that. Moving forward from outdoor visits, that talked about in phase 2. We're still waiting to see what that would look like, but we anticipate that will be where we get into indoor visits. Let's see. Why can't a dyad from the same home, for example, husband and wife, visit together for an outdoor visit? It's to minimize infection risk. Only allowing 1 visit per week is often because of timing. Because if you have, say, a home of 122 people, they all should have equitable access to visiting. Can families swap out the visitors after 15 minutes? No, it is 1 visitor at a time. So you wouldn't be able to swap people in and out, but who visits can change from week to week. You can also ask your home about them continuing virtual visits to see if that might be another way to increase that visiting time. Does a face shield need to be used in conjunction with a mask or in lieu of a mask? So I spoke to the ADM at the Ministry of Long-Term Care, Brian Pollard, the other day. And what he said was that you can use a face mask or a face shield in lieu of a mask if that is the only way to create an accessible visit that makes it so that people can understand each other. So for folks who have low hearing or may otherwise need to be able to see someone's face in order to communicate, that's an acceptable option if a mask is not appropriate. Okay, I'm just going to do a few more just so before we move on to the communication piece. Do homes receive funding to hire more staff to support the visits? Yes. Yes, they did. Each home receiving funding every month in an emergency funds. So that can be for hiring staff or other materials needed in order to safely care for residents. Doctors have always been able to do in-person visits when it's necessary. So to answer, can they resume? They would have already been doing them when it's necessary. Okay, I'm just trying to make go a little bit. Just saying that some folks may be confused between regular visits under phase 1, so those outdoor visits, and essential visitors for caregiving or to visit gravely ill or palliative peoples. And it's true that there is no frequency limit for those essential visitors. So once again, follow up with your home, communicate with them. If you're not getting a satisfactory resolution, consider the patient ombudsman and the ministry's action line. Okay. All right, I'm just trying to keep an eye. Okay, so I think there are some that were repeat questions, so I hope that that's answered the common questions that have come up. Once again, so just Brian Pollard is the Associate Deputy Minister. He's in policy at the Ministry of Long-Term Care. And you can find the definition of an essential visitor in Directive 3. So we'll make sure that's available to you, but it's also, you can follow up with me after by email and I can send that to you. Now, I think that's actually a good segue to our communications piece, because what we've been hearing throughout the pandemic is that you have a lot of questions. There's so much that we just didn't know at the beginning, how this would unfold and so on. And really much of the conflict or the challenge is around communication. Is families getting what they need? So to help bridge those gaps, Family Council of Ontario, along with some of our part.
Sorry, everybody. I think we lost Sam there. So I think what we will do, we can come back to this slide in a minute, but we'll move on to our scenario. And I do want to introduce you to Joanne Sidorachek. Joanne and Sam were going to work together to respond to these scenarios, but I think, Joanne, you're going to get a first crack at it while Sam hopefully comes back in quickly. So I am going to read out the first scenario, and I also want to acknowledge that many people have raised scenarios that they're dealing with in the chat. We are going to try to consolidate those into some questions that we can further answer later on in the webinar, but we'll also pull those together as a part of our ongoing tracking of insights and input from caregivers. We use that information in a variety of ways. One is we have regular conversations with folks who are working in long-term care, and so we can share the consolidation of your questions and your feedback with them. We also have regular conversations with a number of people within government, and I know that Sam has shared some examples with you. So please know that even if we are not able to answer your question today, we'll do our best to bring those things forward, either in terms of your individual examples about how things are being interpreted, but also in terms of what people's experiences are. And so we'll do our best to move that conversation forward as best as we can. But with that, Joanne, let's look at our stage 1 scenario. So in this scenario, we have Anna Maria, who moved into the home in February. She has dementia. She has difficulty walking and eating. Her son used to come to the home 5 times per week to help his mom at lunchtime, but he was unable to get into the home to do that since March. Throughout the pandemic, he's been concerned about his mom losing weight, and he's just received a call from the home that he can visit with his mom in 5 days. So what should he expect, and how can they help him prepare for this visit? What does the staff do to prepare for this visit, and how can he address his concerns about his mom's care?
Hi, great. Thank you, everybody. And certainly we know that many of our attendees are from the long-term care home administration side and staff side too, as well as caregivers. So we really want to talk about these scenarios and some of the tools and communications that we've already shown in today's session and how they can be used. So for the son of Anna Maria, what he can expect is communication. So it is clear in the guidelines that homes do need to communicate what their policy and their procedure is and what's to be expected. The what caregivers can expect from long-term care homes is one of the documents that we co-created with the Family Council of Ontario. And it can be adapted. We know in these fluid times that really any of our tools that are there are open use for homes and family councils to look at and maybe change and adapt for your particular environment. So we should expect some communication. You should expect around a schedule, him able to go visit at a time that works for him. So as Sam was saying, working with the home around that piece and trying to make it as convenient as possible. He should be prepared by having his COVID test and being prepared for his attestation as well. And the home needs to be prepared about teaching him about PPE and how to wear it. So depending on what his visit's going to be. And then one thing that we heard when we met with a number of caregivers from our Caregiver Advisory Council is that caregivers, the essential caregivers, really want to be recognized for their very important role. And in a home with gowns on and masks and different people coming and family members having to schedule themselves, we heard families want to be recognized. And when we talked with the caregiver identification program in terms of actually having a badge, we heard that some family members really want to be wearing a badge. They want something that shows that they have been prepared to come and visit, that they've had their COVID test, for example, that they know how to properly put on PPE, take it on and take it off, or that they know just to go straight to one location, not wander around the home. So that was a really important piece. And so it's something to talk about with your home and your family council about, is this something that we would like, so that we can recognize who are the essential caregivers and what that actually means. So there is information about that on the OCO website, and you'll get information about that later. And then the piece around what staff to prepare for his visit. When Amy spoke earlier about the Partners in Care pledge, we heard from caregivers that they want to have a pledge that shows that they understand the safety piece, the role that they play. And then we also heard from homes that they want to know that families will understand some of these the responsibilities they have, but also the homes have responsibilities too. The caregivers that we met with actually want to have a pledge that they signed. And this is something to consider. Perhaps this is something that at your home might be of interest. And again, the pledge can be changed. So you can see it on our website. It can be adapted, and it might be something that might be helpful. And in this case, for the son of Anna Maria, it might make for a smoother visit. Amy, did you want to add anything?
I might actually turn it over to Sam, who's back with us now, because you probably have some comments on this scenario.
Yes, so bit of a power failure, but I'm back. So I think that Amy and Joanne have really well covered off what Anna Maria's son might be able to expect, and how a lot of how the home can help him prepare and also help his mom. But I also think that we would emphasize that the home needs to help themselves prepare for families to be back in their communities. And that's preparation such as the making sure that their information is in accessible formats for people perhaps who have hearing or visual impairments. For folks who require information in alternative languages, that's really important for being person-centered. And also then just prepare your staff for what families might be feeling. And that's on the staff to prepare themselves for that. So understanding that families are going to be emotional. This is going to be an emotional, heartbreaking, heartwarming, stressful time. And so to practice and really be empathetic around what families have gone through and their needs right now and their frustration, which is completely justified and valid. And so the home staff need to be prepared for working with and communicating with heartbroken, frustrated folks, and be able to communicate effectively. So the communication tools that we had addressed or developed really can play a role in here as well. So staff can prepare for the visit by thinking proactively about what concerns might Anna Maria's son have. Might he be concerned about his mom losing weight? That's a valid concern. So the home should be coming up or developing a plan to help Anna Maria, navigate eating and eating well, and perhaps, ask Anna Maria's son, what are your mom's favorite treats? What can we do to help her manage her care as best as possible? So covered what he should expect. Also, if you can bring your own face covering, that's highly recommended. If you don't have one, the home will be providing you with a surgical mask or procedure mask, but try to bring your own. So the home should be giving Anna Maria's son lots of information and preparing for maybe some difficult conversations. And, come up with, perhaps he could have, there's something called an SBAR, which is, situation, behavior. Don't remember exactly what it stands for right now, but there's a tool out there that you can use to gather your thoughts. So he could say, I've noticed this. My concern is this. Here are some suggestions for what we can do to help mom gain weight. So there's lots of tools there, but I think I want to highlight that the onus is on the home to be prepared to welcome families back and to communicate proactively.
Great. Well, thanks to both Joanne and Sam for sharing some comments. And I know we're getting follow-up questions in the chat. We're trying to stay with those as much as we can, but we will come back to questions at the end and try and draw in as many of those as possible. But let's go to the next slide just so we can continue to explore this a little bit. So one of the things we certainly heard from family caregivers is that it's a challenge in terms of who is able to go. So in this continuation of scenario number one, we see that Anna Maria's daughter is upset and wondering why her brother was able to visit, but she wasn't. So what could have led to this situation and what could be done? Sam, you're still unmuted, so maybe I'll turn over to you first for your understanding of some of the options for this.
So, yeah, Anna Maria's daughter maybe is upset, wondering why her brother had access and she didn't. So, and I think that is, that's going to be a normal response and completely understandable, that because it's only one visitor at a time, it's not going to be everyone at the same time. So Anna Maria's daughter, there is going to be internal family conflicts perhaps. I think any and every family is going to have some conflict amongst family members, so there could be that. Perhaps the brother was or is Anna Maria's power of attorney, and the home went to him first, and maybe he didn't reach out to his sister. Perhaps Anna Maria's daughter's upset because she lives closer, and it was actually the more hands-on caregiver. So I'd say in terms of what can be done, that's when homes can help to facilitate with families, and that they can, maybe it's, a conference call with a social worker to help navigate who should be visiting. Maybe it's helping to set up a schedule where you're alternating who's coming in person, but then also offering virtual visits if appropriate. So I think that, I'd say this is completely understandable. And, I'd probably be upset too if my brother had more access to my mom than I did. But what I'd be looking for is some sort of solution, something that's equitable. So that recognizes family dynamics, and that the home can provide support to navigate this.
Thanks, Sam. Let's go to Joanne from OCO for some additional thoughts on this stage one scenario.
Yeah, it's certainly a really difficult scenario. And I saw lots in the chat box about the difference between essential caregivers and visitors. And visiting and social visits are wonderful, and they're very helpful and supportive for residents around their psychosocial well-being and their happiness. And so it is that piece about perhaps there's a conversation around asking the residents themselves, there's one time available this week, who would it be? Who do you need to see based on what your care needs are? Because as Sam was saying, there may be one family member, one caregiver who has a different role and knows more about the family members. So in terms of how the care team works together, there might be a timing piece where there might be a need to have one family member caregiver come at a different time than another, just based on what their need is. And then I would encourage the family councils and the residence councils and the long-term care homes to get together and talk about these scenarios and think about what do we do. And perhaps in some of the documentation and the communication, such as the what to expect, that could be addressed in that home's what to expect communication, and they could address that, because I'm sure this comes up very often, and it would be very upsetting, and I think it makes sense to have open conversation, dialogue about it, and come up with a way we're going to communicate and help decide and work out some kind of a schedule.
Great, thanks, Joanne. Further questions coming in the chat, and I really appreciate the questions and the concerns that people are raising. It underscores what we've been hearing from caregivers in terms of the diversity of experiences that people are having. And so thank you for sharing that, and I think it's an opportunity to see what other people are using as strategies, but also to see some of the range of those experiences. And as I mentioned before, we will pull these together and share them in a few channels. One is that we do have regular conversations with stakeholder groups who work in long-term care. So we'll have the opportunity to share that consolidated feedback with them in terms of your experiences as family members in that broader definition of family, with whom you have a relationship with a resident in long-term care, and we will also share the information with government. We also had a question in terms of, are the long-term care homes aware of some of the things that OCO is doing? We have had the opportunity to present to Advantage Ontario as well as the Ontario Long-Term Care Association. We've shared the information out regarding our initiatives in terms of Caregiver ID. I cannot guarantee that that means that all homes are aware, but we are getting the word out there. It is live on our website, so you are most welcome to share the information out. We are looking for partners to work with us as a part of our learning collaborative. So there's certainly still room for groups to join and to be a part of building out what this process would look like, and also thinking through some of the challenges that people may face through the process, because that's one of the other ways that we can play a supporting role. I also think it provides the opportunity to share best practices across different organizations. The chat here today really underscores the wide range of experiences that people have. And so when we bring people together from different homes to share their experiences and their successes and their challenges, then sometimes it can really inspire those conversations to go to the next level. I'll just take a couple more questions that I see popping up in my chat. This is not a thorough review. I just sort of zero into where I see OCO. OCO is actually a new organization. We were incorporated in 2018 and got up and running in 2019. So we were actually in our first full year of operation when this pandemic arrived for all of us. And it's been a very interesting time to be getting up and running as an organization. It has enabled us to have some really important conversations with different stakeholders, but we do know that there's still a lot of people who are just getting to know us or may not yet have heard about us. And so we're certainly welcoming those conversations with individual long-term care homes, different groups of representatives, and so certainly happy to engage in that dialogue. So to continue us on the conversation here, why don't we look at another scenario? I think we have one more. Oh, we don't. Okay, so that's great. We have lots of questions. I think it's important for people to hear some of the things that you have. So let's move to Sam to talk about supports for families. And then I think we'll try and do a little bit of a back and forth around some of the questions as we're consolidating them that are coming up.
Great, thank you. So recognizing that families feel alone, but you shouldn't, because I know that there are over 75,000 people who live in long-term care who call it home. And so those families need support. So what we've done is we started to hold virtual family forums. And you can see our next ones that are coming up next week. We offer them in both English and French. They are facilitated by an FCO staff member. And these are peer support sessions. So we have up to 25 people, we keep them small intentionally, who can get an update from us, so that day's information or the most recent, but then we just turn it over to families and say, what do you want to talk about? And we say we may not have all the answers, but you can give and receive support from your peers. So you're not alone. This is one avenue that we provide just to give you an opportunity to connect with each other. You can always call us. Our virtual doors are open to you. And whether if you have a specific question or you just need to talk, we're here for you. We also have with some of our partners, including the Ontario Association of Residents Councils, we call it our sister organization. We work for families, they work with residents, developed a virtual visits toolkit, so that homes who weren't already doing Skype, FaceTime, and so on visits would be able to do that. And what we're hoping is that these sorts of visits will continue even when we're into the next phase of in-person visits, because something else that we've heard is that even when we do get back to indoor visits, there are some families who frankly won't be comfortable with that. That they may be older adults themselves or have some vulnerabilities to illness, so they want to still maintain those virtual visits. Because one thing that we have definitely heard loud and clear is that not all families are the same. You can't say that family caregivers are, one monolithic group. There are definitely variations in the experience and the perspectives. So being very mindful of that, we've trying to create multiple opportunities for engagement and also to connect with your home. So that's some of what we're doing, but you can check out all of our materials and updates and so on our website.
Great, thank you. I'm going to actually start with one question just so I don't lose it in the thread of the chat. It was a question about being connected with RNAO, which is the Registered Nurses Association of Ontario. We are connected with them. We're certainly well aware of the conversations and the work that they are doing. So that's definitely one of the things that OCO does, is has conversations with a lot of these other stakeholder groups and talks about the issues and the concerns that we're hearing from caregivers, and to look towards working together on solutions that can be brought to bear in different situations. And RNAO is definitely one of those groups that we have been talking with. So I want to share a little bit of information about some of the supports that OCO has for caregivers. We have our 24/7 helpline. This is about learning about the programs and resources and services that are available in your area. This is a bit of a tricky situation because that has been in a state of flux over the last 4 months. But based on the best updated information about any virtual services or supports, you can certainly learn more about what's available by calling our helpline. We also have a live chat on our website that's available weekdays from 7 to 9, and so you're welcome to come online and chat with us, and both of those are available in English and French. We have our caregiver webinar series where we bring in experts on a wide range of topics. We cover everything from personal self-care to learning about different strategies that can support caregivers in the different circumstances that they find themselves in, to building a knowledge base on a number of issues that caregivers face. So we have an ongoing series. We do a couple of those a month, and then we do more on an emergent basis in collaboration with other organizations and experts as we need to. We do have online support groups that run on a weekly basis, and so if you're interested in connecting with other caregivers who may or may not be in the same circumstances as you, you're most welcome to join those online support groups. And we also have one-to-one peer support where we match caregivers with a peer who will have walked a similar kind of walk to you and may be able to provide support. So those are some of the general supports that we have for caregivers. And then, as I mentioned, and as you heard about in the examples today, we have a number of things that we're working on that are specifically related to COVID and the changes around guidelines and directions related to access and visitation. So you can certainly take a look at the growing number of resources that we have on our website around partners in care. All of the things that we shared with you today are on there, and we will have more coming up. And we do that, as I mentioned before, always in concert with caregivers. So we identify the issues with caregivers, we identify the solutions with them, and then we refine those solutions together as well. So I think you can see here both OCO and FCO's websites here, where you can follow regular updates on COVID-19, as well as all of the resources that we have on this specific issue, as well as a wide range of resources that are available all the time. I am watching the chat move up as I'm continuing to talk. I need to do a little bit of a catch up on the questions to see what I can come forward and answer. So I might turn it over to you, Sam, to answer a few more questions here.
I am definitely on with that. So I'm seeing a few questions about the family council aspect. So I'm just going to reiterate our mandate. So what we are given funding to do, essentially, what we're contracted to do, is to assist in the formation, sustainability, and education of family councils. That's our mandate. And so we look at our aligned mission and vision as working through family councils to help them increase the quality of care, life, and experience of everyone in that long-term care home. So the question I'm going to go to first is, does FCO help or respond to family members who are not a part of the family council? Absolutely. And the reason that we do that, not only because we believe that any family member or every family member plays an important role in the life of a long-term care home, but also in the legislation governing long-term care, the Long-Term Care Homes Act, every family member or person of importance to a resident is entitled to be a member of the family council, which means every single one of you who has a loved one, a friend, a family member, someone who's deeply important to you living in a long-term care home, you're a family council member, whether you're active or not. So yes, reach out to us. We can help you to set up meetings through Skype or Zoom, and we'll have tools available launching soon that'll help you do just that. So that's that one question. I'm looking at, see what else are we doing? Who are we working with the government on? So I said that's policy and licensing division. We're also working very, very closely with other organizations in sort of the same domain as us. So that's the Ontario Association of Residents Councils, who has a nearly identical mandate to us, except for with residents. So they have the same level of standing, so to speak, as we do with government. So if you have questions about them as well, I can connect you there, because they are doing the same work essentially as we are. Okay. We have heard that getting testing, let alone those tests every 2 weeks, is quite a challenge. That's something we've raised with government many, many, many times. Because if that's a requirement, there needs to be support and able to make that happen. So I'm saying, you know, we do keep bringing that up as much as possible. Let's see what else. I'm just going to see question about a few questions under the same topic, really, which is, how do families and family council members advocate? So FCO isn't a lobbying or advocacy organization per se. What we do is we help families learn how to advocate, because that's within the training and education part of our mandate. And we also collect information from families and share it with government. That's our role in long-term care. There are other organizations that do more lobbying and advocacy, and we can connect you to them as well if you're interested. So the power of a family council is your collective voice. It's being together, whether across a table or in a virtual space, where you can share your concerns, your expertise, and your ideas. If you don't already have a family council at your home, contact us and we can help you see how to get that started. If you do have one right now, start having email chains going back and forth about what are your top concerns, whether it's plexiglass barriers so you can be closer and you know, not using masks, or to, you know, I've seen those holding hand cutouts using surgical draping. So if those are your concerns, you can write letters to the ministry. I give out the Minister of Long-Term Care's email address pretty freely. Also the Chief Medical Officer of Health and other folks. So really what you want to be doing is connect with each other, talk about your shared solutions, bring it down to a few key issues, see what solutions maybe you can come up with, and write letters. We appreciate having an FYI about what you're doing, but councils are autonomous. So you set your own goals. You make your own decisions about what it is you want to pursue. We're here to help facilitate that and to help you learn the skills you need in order to do your work effectively. So going a little bit
I can give you a minute to scan there, Sam, and I'll do a couple and then I'll take it back to you. So we've had a couple of questions about sharing information with long-term care homes and the work that we're doing. So I want to just clarify that in terms of the toolkit, the Partners in Care resources that we have, these are adaptable by the home. So it has the information that they need, and then they can adapt those to their local circumstances and use them as appropriate to communicate with families. In terms of the learning collaboratives, yes, we do have a long-term care home learning collaborative, and we are welcoming homes that are interested in being a part of that. So if you're in communication with the home, or you are actually here in this webinar as a representative from one of those homes and you're interested, please feel free to get in touch with us. A little bit later, we will share our contact information so that you have that as well. And I just, want to acknowledge that we've heard a lot of different questions about the particular circumstances that people find themselves in, but there are themes that I think we start to see that cover across those comments. And so what we can do then is consolidate those themes and share those with the different groups that we talked about earlier in terms of government, in terms of stakeholder groups that we work with in long-term care. So we will definitely do that. But I do want to acknowledge that there are questions and concerns that people have here around their individual circumstances and experiences that we don't have the answers to. And I wish that I did, in all honesty. It is an agonizing situation that people find themselves in, and that is, not lost on us by any stretch of the imagination. The other thing that I've seen as a theme in the chat is wanting to know what things are going to look like down the road. And I also wish I had the answer to that, believe me you. I know it's very tricky because we don't know what a second wave might look like, when that might come, what the implications will be, what the direction will be. And I know how concerning and challenging that is for all of us, because it makes it very difficult to plan and for us to sort of know what to expect. So, what we will do is make sure that we continue to provide that voice of caregivers, that we continue to share the concerns that people have, that we continue to identify some of the roadblocks that people are facing and look at potential solutions for them. I've certainly seen a theme in this chat around testing and some of the challenges that people are facing around testing. That's a key theme that we can pull together some of the suggestions that people have included here and share those with the appropriate people. So we will do our very best to share that information out and ensure that it's a part of the dialogue. So I want to acknowledge that there are some things that we know, but there's a lot of things that all of us remain in the unknown in terms of timing, and that includes for stage 2. And I did just see a question just a moment ago pop up about that. We don't yet know when that is going to unfold and what the specifics will look like. But we'll certainly be looking at that as closely as you do and figuring out how we can be a part of making that work as smoothly as possible. I'm going to continue to scan through some of the questions here and turn it back over to you, Sam.
Great. So I'm seeing quite a bit of interest in how do we make family councils work during this time. So that's a really good question, but we're here to help you for that. So I'm seeing a question of new family members, maybe those who have moved in, their person moved in just before the pandemic, about how they get access to virtual family council meetings. And then a related question about family council leaders getting the family council contacts. So I'd say that whether you're a new or established family council, the best way is to get your word out is to connect with the staff assistant at your long-term care home and request that a note with your contact information be sent out to families of the home. So the homes can't give you as a family council leader contact information for families without their express consent. It's due to privacy. But what we do encourage is to draft an invitation or maybe an announcement about Family Council, who you are, your goals, and how to connect with you, and ask that to be sent out to families at your home. So that way you do get more people into your group and can continue to do a lot of that peer support and information and knowledge exchange. I'm also seeing something about, are there any efforts underway to limit COVID positive people, so who like to walk around the home, to avoid having them going into other people's bedrooms, so perhaps putting people at risk? So that Behavioral Supports Ontario has some materials that are available. Brain Exchange, I believe, does as well. So that would be a best ask to whoever is your behavioral supports contact at your home, because there are a variety of tools that can be used to support people living with responsive behaviors, whether that's walking around or perhaps going into other people's bedrooms. There are ways to help with that situation. So I'd say if that's a question that you have, connect with your family council, because then you can make a request of the home to provide information to you about that. Let's see, I'm just going to take a look. So someone did drop the patient ombudsman contact into the chat box. So strongly encourage you to contact them to share your experience, because they are doing a systemic investigation into this, the experience of families for long-term care homes. So seeing about the government directives and emergency orders. So we're under a state of emergency likely until later this month, at least. The government's also doing work so that they can continue with some of the emergency orders after the state of emergency has been lifted. So no, it doesn't mean that you won't be able to get into long-term care until next year. That would simply be unacceptable. And the government has heard that quite strongly, that people do need to be able to see their loved one in a safe way that promotes connection. So I don't have a crystal ball, neither does Amy, unfortunately. So we're still asking government regularly about when we may expect this. What about residents leaving the home? Unfortunately, residents do need to stay on home property right now. If they can go outside to get fresh air, that's absolutely permitted and should be allowed. In terms of taking your loved one home to live with you as a caregiver, there are rules around that. So it depends on the length of the person being out of the home, whether it's more or less than a certain number of days. We do have the specific information on that. I just don't have it quite at my fingertips right now, but the process will differ depending on length of absence and whether they need to reapply. But it would be a priority readmission to get readmitted back into their home. How often should homes?
No, go ahead. Yeah, go for it.
How often should homes be communicating with you? We suggest at least weekly, maybe bi-weekly, or as anything changes. And so we have resources to help homes understand how often to communicate with families. But I'd say the home needs to ask you. The home needs to ask what information you want, how you want it, and how often, because we make suggestions based on what we hear, but ultimately, the home needs to be communicating in a person-centered way, and that includes asking you what it is that you're looking for. Back over to you, Amy.
Thanks. So just a couple of other comments about the chat in general, and then a couple of questions that I'll address as well. We are going to do a consolidated FAQ, frequently asked questions. It won't cover everything in the chat, but we will pull out those key themes and post an FAQ as a follow-up to this webinar, again, so that you can refer to it, but also so that people who weren't able to be a part of this can hear it. I want to just address some questions about connections with hospitals and also timing. So in terms of hospitals, yes, we are working closely with the Ontario Hospital Association on, again, sharing caregiver input, concerns, and feedback, and working with them on solutions around caregiver engagement. We also have a learning collaborative for hospitals around our Partners in Care initiative related to hospitals. So we have one for hospitals, one for long-term care, and it may be that down the road those groups choose to do some things together, and we'll certainly be happy to do that if that's what makes sense. We had some more questions about timing, and one of the things that we are doing with these kinds of things is working within the information that we receive about what is feasible from the government. So all of the kinds of initiatives that we're working on have to be in alignment with the direction that has been provided about what is allowed and not allowed. So that is the parameters that we need to work within. And so certainly as stage 2 opens up, we'll be ready and we'll adapt as quickly as possible to that. And that's why we have our Partners in Care resources, and we will continue to evolve them. What that will look like in the fall and the second wave, unfortunately, we don't know. But what we have been doing in collaboration with a range of partners is different forms of scenario planning. And I think that that's one of the best tools that we have right now, is to say, okay, it may look like this, it may look like this, it may look like this, so that we're ready depending on what things look like in terms of broader numbers across the province, outbreaks in different homes, etc. And so we can adapt to that. But certainly at the Ontario Caregiver Organization, because we work with caregivers who may be providing care in their homes or to someone else who's still living independently in their homes, to people who are living in long-term care, who are living in other forms of congregated living, as well as in or outpatients at hospitals. Our mandate is to support caregivers who provide care in all of those different kinds of settings. And so we're working with partners regularly and in communication regularly on different solutions and strategies across all of those areas. Back to you, Sam, in case you see any more questions there that you can address.
Yeah, I'm just gonna, I have a few that are quite similar, so I'm gonna address them as a whole, about getting information about the up-to-date directives. So on our website, actually you can see in the screenshot here, we do have a dedicated COVID-19 section. So in there, you'll see the most recent directives. So in one place, you'll have access to those there. And also in our daily email updates, our e-bulletins, when there's new information to share, it's posted there. So definitely sign up for that, because that is, we're trying to give you all the information that you need without it being overwhelming. So information is posted there. Hearing a little bit more about family councils getting contact information for the folks at the family members of residents. So families need to give expressed consent to contact. So that means that the home needs to ask and receive permission for the home specifically to share that family member's contact information with family council. It's the same approach we use. We make sure that people explicitly give us consent to contact them, but we have permission to contact form on our website that you could adapt to an email. So we will be doing, as I said, more work to help family councils navigate working in a virtual environment over the coming months, so stay tuned for that. What we've been focusing on since March is creating tools and resources that homes and individual families can use. So our communication materials were launched back in, I believe, late March or early April, and others have been coming out regularly since then. But what we also have, similar to OCO, is we have family members on our board of directors, as well as a resource development advisory committee that we work with to do, to identify issues, themes, and responses. So similar to OCO, we have family members who sit on not only for governance for our organization, but as partners for development of materials and so on. So family council is one of the great ways to be involved and to be connected, and also a way to have your collective voice heard. And as FCO, as I said, one of the pieces of work that we do is collect those different inputs and realizing that not all families necessarily agree on the same thing. For example, visiting and so on and testing. So we take all those disparate thoughts and ideas, analyze, identify themes, and share that with government so that they are aware of what's happening at the grassroots level. So I think those are the questions that I've seen come in. So I perhaps will throw it back over to you, Amy.
Great, thanks. So we'll put up our contact info here so that you know how to get in touch with us. As we've both mentioned, there's information available on the Ontario Caregiver Organization website as well as the Family Council of Ontario website. You're also welcome to reach out to us. A follow-up to the question around hospitals, as I mentioned, we have been working with the Ontario Hospital Association, and you can find information on their website on their care partner presence policies during COVID-19 section, and you can also find our partners in care information related to hospitals on our website as well. So I want to extend an invitation to all of you to subscribe to our newsletters and e-bulletins. This is a really good way to stay up to date with our respective organizations. So there's information there. You can subscribe to our bulletins on our websites. Both of our organizations are on Twitter and Facebook. OCO is also on Instagram, LinkedIn, and we have a YouTube channel. So feel free to follow us. We will be providing up-to-date information, and this is an active area of focus for us on an ongoing basis. So please follow the updates that we have. And of course, if you need to get in touch, then the contact information is on the slide as well. Feel free to call, feel free to email, and feel free to engage and connect with us. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for the really active engagement on the chat. Thank you for sharing your questions, your concerns, and for engaging with each other, because there was a lot of support that was provided to each other in terms of potential strategies, but also a real sense of empathy in terms of the situations that people find themselves in. So thank you to everyone who has joined us today. Thank you to our team who supported us. I want to give a big shout out to Stacy and Kathleen for really staying on top of the chat and providing some technical support, and also to my OCO colleagues, Joanne, Lisa, and Danielle. Thank you to everyone. We will be continuing this conversation and really appreciate you taking the time to be in dialogue with us today.
Thank you all so much for your work as family caregivers and for spending your afternoon with us.